My name is Myrtle, and I'm 62 years old. Ever since my husband passed, I've been pouring all my love and savings into my son, Jacob's family. This Christmas would have been the first time seeing my grandson in 3 years, and I had my bags nearly packed. Then my phone rang. When my son told me I was not welcome for Christmas, I smiled, got in the car, and drove home. 2 days later, I did something that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from. And hit subscribe if you value stories about standing up for yourself when family takes advantage of your generosity. I spent 35 years as an elementary school teacher in Cincinnati before retiring. Those years taught me patience, kindness, and how to spot when someone isn't telling the truth. But nothing prepared me for what my own son would do. Jacob is 34 now, married to Amelia for 7 years. They have my only grandchild, little Noah, who just turned 5 last month. I used to see him every weekend when they lived nearby, but that all changed 3 years ago when I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, to be closer to my younger sister, Sandra, after retirement. The house Jacob and Amelia live in, that's something I need to explain. When Noah was born, they were renting a tiny apartment and struggling financially. Jacob worked in marketing, but was between jobs, and Amelia had taken time off from her nursing career to care for the baby. They desperately wanted to buy a home in a good school district, but with their credit history and lack of savings, no bank would approve them for a decent mortgage. That's when I stepped in. My late husband, Gerald, had left me with a substantial life insurance policy. I had been saving it for my own retirement, but seeing my son and his family crammed in that apartment with a newborn broke my heart. I offered to help them buy a house, $300,000. That's how much I put down as a down payment on their beautiful 4-bedroom colonial. The bank approved the mortgage with my name as a co-owner and primary payer, though the house was meant to be theirs. We had an agreement that I would make the monthly mortgage payments of $2,500 while they covered the property taxes and insurance. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary until Jacob got back on his feet financially. But somehow, 5 years later, I was still making those payments. "Mom, we'll add you to the deed once we refinance next year," Jacob would say, each time I gently brought up the subject. The market isn't right yet. I never pushed too hard. That's not who I am. Gerald always said I had a heart too big for my own good. When I moved to Arizona, I told myself it was for Sandra, who had been diagnosed with early arthritis and could use some help. But truthfully, I also needed some space for myself. I had spent so many years putting everyone else first. At 60, I figured it was finally time to build a life that wasn't centered solely around my son's needs. The first year after moving, I flew back for every holiday and special occasion. By the second year, Jacob and Amelia started making excuses about why those times weren't convenient. Noah has soccer practice, or Amelia's hospital schedule is packed, or we're just so busy with the renovations. I settled for video calls with Noah 3 times a week. I watched him grow through a screen, sending packages of books and toys monthly to maintain our connection. He would bounce with excitement, showing me his latest drawings or demonstrating how he could count to 100. Those calls sustained me. As this Christmas approached, marking 3 years since I'd hugged my grandson, I was determined to visit. Jacob had been promoted at work. Amelia had returned to nursing full-time, and their social media showed a comfortable life filled with vacations and new furniture. Something else had changed too. The tone of our conversations had shifted subtly over recent months. Jacob called less frequently. When we did speak, he seemed distracted, often cutting our conversation short. Amelia, who once sent me daily photos of Noah, now barely acknowledged my texts asking about him. "It's probably nothing," Sandra reassured me when I mentioned these changes. "They're just busy with their lives. Everyone gets caught up in their own world." I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But teachers develop a sixth sense about when something isn't right, and that feeling kept gnawing at me each time Jacob rushed me off the phone or Amelia redirected my questions about visiting. Still, I never imagined what would happen when I finally announced my Christmas visit plans. I never expected my own son to tell me I wasn't welcome in the home I had essentially provided for his family. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. Let me go back to how it all unfolded. 2 months before Christmas, I started shopping for special gifts. For Noah, I purchased a complete collection of Magic Treehouse books, remembering how Jacob had loved them at that age. I also found an interactive globe that spoke facts about each country when touched, and a telescope powerful enough to see Saturn's rings clearly. I wanted gifts that would spark his imagination and love for learning. For Jacob, I had something irreplaceable. Gerald's grandfather's pocket watch gold, with intricate engravings, and a chain that had been in our family for 4 generations. Gerald had intended to give it to Jacob on his 30th birthday, but passed before he could. I had been waiting for the right moment, and Christmas, in person, seemed perfect. For Amelia, I chose my mother's pearl necklace, cream-colored spheres, with a subtle pink undertone that would complement her fair complexion. These weren't just expensive gifts. They were pieces of our family history, meant to welcome her fully into our traditions and legacy. I spent hours wrapping each present, with care writing heartfelt cards, expressing how much I missed them and how proud I was of the family they'd built. I imagined Noah's face lighting up as he unwrapped the telescope, Jacob's solemn appreciation of the watch, and Amelia's surprise at receiving such a meaningful heirloom. With gifts prepared, I booked my flight for December 20th, planning to stay through New Year's. I found a beautiful holiday dress for Christmas dinner and even practiced a few new bedtime stories I could read to Noah. The anticipation of holding my grandson again after so long filled me with joy that carried me through the November chill. 1 week before my departure, I laid out my suitcase and began packing. Sweaters, slacks, comfortable shoes for playing with Noah, and my special Christmas brooch shaped like a snowflake that Gerald gave me on our first Christmas together. I was folding my nightgown when my phone rang. Jacob's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a smile in my voice. "Hi, sweetheart. I was just packing. Is there anything special you want me to bring from Arizona? I found this amazing local honey that I think Noah would love on his breakfast toast." There was a pause, too long to be comfortable, before Jacob spoke. His voice sounded distant, rehearsed even. "Mom, I need to tell you something about Christmas." My hands stilled on the nightgown. "What about Christmas, honey?" "Mom, this year, we're not expecting you to come. We have other plans." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the nightgown crumpled in my lap. "Other plans? But I already bought my ticket. We've been talking about this visit for months." "We never actually confirmed dates, Mom," Jacob said, his voice taking on an edge I rarely heard directed at me. "You just assumed. Had I?" I mentally replayed our recent conversations, remembering specifically mentioning December 20th, and Jacob responding with, "Sounds good." But now wasn't the time to argue about who said what. I can change my dates if the 20th doesn't work, I offered, trying to keep my voice steady. Or I could come for just a few days instead of staying through New Year's. It's not about the dates, Mom. The house is going to be really full. Amelia's parents are coming, and her brother with his kids. There just isn't space. I can stay at a hotel, I countered, hearing the desperation creeping into my voice. The Holiday Inn near you had availability. I checked. Another uncomfortable pause. Look, Mom, our schedule is packed with events. Amelia's family has planned activities every day. We wouldn't even get to see you much. I felt tears threatening, but forced them back. I don't need to be entertained, Jacob. I just want to see Noah. It's been 3 years. We can plan a visit for spring instead, he said quickly. February or March might work better for everyone. But Christmas is special, I whispered, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. Noah's been asking when Grandma is coming in our video calls. Jacob's voice hardened. Mom, I'm sorry, but we've made our decision. This year just doesn't work for us. I need to go now. I'll call you next week. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the half-packed suitcase that now seemed to mock my excitement. 3 years of monthly mortgage payments, countless gifts, sent hours spent on video calls, maintaining a relationship with my grandson, all dismissed with, "We've made our decision." I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, a strange calm settled over me as I methodically unpacked the suitcase, folding each item and returning it to my dresser. When everything was put away, I walked to my car, drove to the nearest grocery store, and bought ingredients for a simple dinner as if this were any ordinary day. It wasn't until I returned home that I allowed myself to really feel what had happened. My son had shut me out of their Christmas. The holiday I had always made magical for him as a child, he was now denying me with my grandson. I called the airline and canceled my ticket, accepting the partial credit for a future flight to somewhere, anywhere else. That evening, I called Sandra. My voice broke as soon as she answered. He doesn't want me to come for Christmas. What? Who doesn't? Sandra asked, confusion evident in her tone. Jacob. He said they're not expecting me, that there's no room and they have too many plans with Amelia's family. Sandra's sharp intake of breath told me she understood the magnitude of this rejection. Did he say why? Did something happen between you two? Nothing I can think of, I replied, replaying the last several months of interactions in my mind. He's been distant, but I thought he was just busy with work. That doesn't sound like Jacob, Sandra said, though we both knew people change. The little boy, who once couldn't fall asleep without his mother's goodnight kiss, had grown into a man who could casually break her heart over the phone. Check their social media, Sandra suggested after a moment. See what they're really planning for the holidays. I rarely browsed social media, finding the constant updates about strangers' lives somewhat tedious. But I did have accounts to keep up with family photos. I opened Facebook on my tablet and navigated to Amelia's page, which was more active than Jacob's. What I found sent a chill through me. Just 3 days earlier, Amelia had posted photos of their house, decorated lavishly for Christmas. Expensive garlands wrapped the staircase, professionally arranged lights adorned every window, and beneath an enormous tree sat piles of wrapped presents. The caption read, "Ready for the most magical Christmas ever, with the people who matter most." I scrolled further and found a post from the previous week showcasing their new car, a luxury SUV with a red bow on top. Early Christmas present for the growing family, Amelia had written. Growing family. I wondered if they were expecting another child, but found no announcement. Then I saw it, a comment from Amelia responding to her cousin, "Finally, a Christmas, with just our real family. No extra complications this year." My hands trembled as I continued scrolling. Photos of Noah, opening early, presents from Nana and Papa, Amelia's parents. Plans for a skiing trip after Christmas. Not a single mention of me or any space issue in their home. In fact, it seemed they had renovated to add a guest room recently, based on Amelia's posts about interior decorating. As I set down my tablet, I noticed an email notification on my phone. It was addressed to both Jacob and me, sent to our shared family email account that we'd set up years ago for household matters related to their home. The email was from a property appraisal company, confirming an appointment for the following week. Why would they need their house appraised? A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I picked up my phone again and called Barbara, my former neighbor, who still lived 2 doors down from Jacob and Amelia. Barbara and I had maintained our friendship after my move, occasionally meeting for lunch when I visited Cincinnati. "Barbara, it's Myrtle," I said when she answered. "How are you?" After a few minutes of catching up, I carefully asked, "Have you seen Jacob and his family recently? I'm trying to coordinate a visit, but their schedule seems very tight." Barbara hesitated before answering, confirming my suspicion that something was being hidden. "Well, I ran into Amelia at the grocery store last week. She mentioned they're looking at properties in Lakewood, much bigger homes. She said something about needing more space, now that Jacob's career is taking off." Lakewood was an exclusive suburb, with homes easily triple the price of their current house. The pieces were starting to come together in a picture I didn't want to see. "Did she happen to mention if they're selling their current house?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Another pause. "I think so, yes. She said they hoped to list it after the holidays." "Myrtle, is everything okay? You sound worried." "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just trying to plan ahead." "Thanks, Barbara." And after hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table with a growing sense of betrayal. My son and daughter-in-law were planning to sell the house. I had helped them buy the house where I still paid the mortgage, and they hadn't said a word to me about it. I opened my file cabinet and pulled out the folder containing all the documents related to Jacob's house. The mortgage agreement clearly listed me as a co-owner and the primary payer on the loan. They couldn't sell without my signature, yet they were already getting appraisals and looking at new properties. The pieces clicked into terrible place. They didn't want me for Christmas because they didn't want to face me. They were planning to cut me out of their lives once they no longer needed my financial support. That night, I could barely sleep. I kept thinking about the mortgage payments I'd faithfully sent for 5 years. $300,000 as a down payment. Another $150,000 in monthly payments since then. Almost $500,000 invested in giving my son's family stability and security. The next morning, I called my bank and asked about the mortgage status. The customer service representative confirmed what I already knew, that I was the primary account holder responsible for payments. But she also shared something unexpected. "Mrs. Johnson, I see there have been 2 attempts to remove your name from the mortgage in the past month," she said. "Both were denied since they require your notarized signature on several documents." My hand tightened around the phone. 2 attempts. Who initiated those requests? Mr. Jacob Johnson. Our loan officer informed him that all parties on the mortgage would need to agree to any changes. So Jacob had already tried to remove my name, likely preparing for the sale. I thanked the representative and hung up a cold determination replacing my hurt. I returned to the family email account and began searching through years of correspondence. In a folder labeled House Documents, I found emails between Jacob and Amelia dating back several months. Emails they clearly didn't realize I could access. Mom's name is still on everything. We need to figure out how to get her off the deed before we list. The realtor says we could clear at least $200K profit with the market right now, more than enough for the Lakewood down payment. We need to wait until after we close on the new house to tell her about the sale. She might make things difficult, and the one that finally broke my heart completely. Once we sell this place, we won't need her anymore. We can visit Arizona once a year to keep the peace, but no more of these constant calls and packages for Noah. I wouldn't need me anymore. After everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given, I was just a financial resource, to be discarded when no longer useful. Not a mother, not a grandmother, just a checkbook with an expiration date. I printed the emails and placed them in my file folder. Then I sat on my sofa and finally let the tears come. They flowed for hours, years of love and sacrifice, washing down my face as I confronted the truth about my relationship with my son. I thought about the life I had put on hold for Jacob. After Gerald died, I had focused entirely on helping Jacob through college, then his early career struggles, then supporting his family. I had even turned down a marriage proposal from William, a kind man I'd met at a teacher's conference, because Jacob needed me to babysit Noah on weekends when William would have wanted to travel. Every decision I'd made had been with Jacob's best interests at heart. I'd believed I was being a good mother by supporting him financially and emotionally, never asking for anything in return except to be included in their lives. Now, I saw how that unbalanced relationship had taught him to see me as a resource rather than a person with needs and feelings of my own. As evening fell, my phone rang with Noah's special ringtone, signaling our scheduled video call. I wiped my eyes and answered, putting on a smile for my grandson. "Grandma!" Noah exclaimed, his face too close to the camera as usual. "I lost another tooth, see." He opened his mouth wide to show the gap. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, amazed at how children could instantly lift even the heaviest heart. "Did the tooth fairy come?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "She brought me $5 whole. Dad says that's because I'm a big boy now." We chatted about his school day and the Christmas crafts he was making. Then, without warning, he said something that shattered what remained of my composure. "Dad says you're too old, and we don't need you anymore. Are you going to die soon, Grandma?" I gasped, physically recoiling from the phone. "Noah, honey, who told you that?" I heard Dad telling Mom. He said once they move to the new house, they won't have to deal with you anymore. What does deal with you mean? In the background, I heard a door open and Amelia's voice calling Noah's name in alarm. The phone was suddenly wrenched away, and Jacob appeared on screen, his face flushed. "Mom, hi, Noah needs to go to bed now. We'll call tomorrow, okay?" And before I could respond, the call ended. I sat in the dark, Noah's innocent repetition of his father's cruel words echoing in my mind. Not only were they planning to cut me out financially, but they were already poisoning my relationship with my grandson. The pain was so intense, it felt physical, a vice squeezing my chest until I could barely breathe. That night was the lowest point of my life since Gerald's death. I felt utterly alone, betrayed by the person I loved most in the world. I considered calling Sandra, but couldn't bear to speak the words aloud yet. Instead, I took a sleeping pill and fell into a mercifully dreamless sleep. Morning brought clarity. As I sipped my coffee, watching the Arizona sunrise paint the sky in pinks and oranges, I felt something shift inside me. The overwhelming pain receded, replaced by a steady resolve. I had spent my life being a giver, always putting others' needs before my own. Perhaps it was time to stand up for myself. I called my old college roommate, Martha, who had become a family law attorney. We hadn't spoken in months, but she answered with the same warmth as always. "Myrtle, what a lovely surprise. How are you?" "Not great, actually," I admitted. "I need some legal advice about a house I co-own with my son." I explained the situation, including the attempted removal of my name from the mortgage and the plans to sell without my knowledge. Martha listened without interrupting, then sighed heavily. "First, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Second, you're in a legally protected position. As co-owner and primary mortgage holder, nothing can happen to that property without your consent. They can't sell, they can't refinance, they can't do anything without your signature." "What should I do?" I asked. "I don't want to be vindictive, but I can't let them take advantage of me anymore." "You have several options," Martha explained. "You could demand repayment for all the mortgage payments you've made if you want to remove yourself from the deed. You could force a sale and claim your portion of the proceeds. Or you could simply assert your rights as co-owner and make it clear that any decisions about the property require your involvement." We discussed various approaches, and I felt stronger with each passing minute. By the end of our conversation, I had a plan. First, I called my bank and suspended the automatic mortgage payment scheduled for the first of the month, just 3 days away. The representative confirmed that the payment would not go through unless I reinstated it. Next, I drafted an email to Jacob, copying Martha. I attached copies of the mortgage agreement, the deed showing me as co-owner, the emails between Jacob and Amelia discussing removing me from the deed, and the property appraisal confirmation. The email was direct, but not emotional. "Jacob, it has come to my attention that you and Amelia are planning to sell the house without informing me, despite my name being on the deed and my continuing to make mortgage payments. I have suspended the mortgage payment scheduled for January 1st and will not resume payments until we have a clear, legally binding agreement about this property and my investment in it. Please have your attorney contact Martha Lewis, copied here, to discuss next steps. Mom." I hesitated before hitting send, wondering if I was overreacting. But then I remembered Noah's innocent repetition of his father's words and Amelia's comment about finally having Christmas with just our real family. With newfound determination, I pressed send. Then I called Sandra. "I won't be alone for Christmas after all," I told her. "Pack your bags. We're going to Mexico." "Mexico? What happened with Jacob?" she asked, confusion evident in her voice. "I'll explain everything on the way," I promised. "But right now, I need sunshine margaritas and my sister." That afternoon, I booked a 2-week vacation at a beachfront resort in Puerto Vallarta, departing December 23rd. I called William, who had remained a friend despite my rejection of his proposal, and asked if he'd water my plants while I was gone. He agreed immediately, his voice warming, when I explained I'd be away for the holidays. "I'm proud of you, Myrtle," he said simply. "It's about time you did something for yourself." Finally, I contacted my attorney and updated my will. Jacob had always been my sole beneficiary, but now I created a trust for Noah's education that would be administered by Sandra, with specific provisions that Jacob and Amelia could not access the funds for any other purpose. With these practical matters handled, I felt a strange lightness. For the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. It hurt tremendously to create this distance from my son, but I recognized it was necessary for my own well-being and self-respect. 2 days after sending the email and canceling the mortgage payment, my phone exploded with notifications. First came a text from Jacob. "What the hell, Mom, call me immediately." Then a voicemail. "Mom, the bank called about the mortgage payment. What are you doing? This is going to hurt our credit score. Call me back now." I let them all go unanswered as I packed for Mexico. Around noon, Jacob called for the 5th time, and I decided it was time to answer. "Hello, Jacob," I said calmly. "Mom, what is going on? Why did you stop the mortgage payment? And what was that crazy email about? We're not selling the house." His voice was higher than normal panic, evident in every word. "Jacob," I said, keeping my voice steady, "please don't lie to me. I've seen the emails between you and Amelia. I know about the appraisal, the attempts to remove my name from the mortgage, and your plans to buy in Lakewood." Silence fell on the other end of the line. When Jacob spoke again, his tone had changed from outrage to placation. "Mom, you're misunderstanding everything. We were just exploring options. Nothing's been decided. And is that why you told Noah you wouldn't have to deal with me anymore once you moved? Is that why I'm suddenly not welcome for Christmas, despite paying for the roof over your heads for 5 years?" Another pause. "Noah told you that kids misunderstand things, Mom. That's not what I meant at all. What did you mean then when you wrote to Amelia that once you sell the house, you won't need me anymore? Was that also a misunderstanding?" This time, the silence stretched so long, I thought he might have hung up. Finally, he spoke in a subdued voice. "You weren't supposed to see those emails." "Clearly," I replied. "Just as I wasn't supposed to know about the appraisal or the attempts to remove my name from the deed. But I did find out, Jacob, and now we need to deal with this honestly." "Mom, please," his voice cracked slightly. "Just make the mortgage payment. We can talk about everything else later." "No, Jacob. The time for putting off difficult conversations is over. I've been paying for a house that you're planning to sell without my knowledge or consent. That stops now." Jacob's tone turned desperate. "But what do you want from us? We can't afford the mortgage on our own right now." "I want respect," I said simply. "I want to be treated like a person who matters to you, not a bank account. I want honesty about your plans for the house I've invested nearly $500,000 in. And I want to be welcomed as a grandmother to Noah, not shut out because I'm inconvenient to your plans." "Of course you matter to us," Jacob insisted, though his words rang hollow after everything I'd discovered. "We love you, Mom." Love requires more than words, Jacob. It requires actions that demonstrate care and respect. I haven't seen those from you recently. Before he could respond, I heard the beep of another incoming call. "Amelia." "Your wife is calling me now," I told Jacob. "I'm going to talk to her, and then I think we should have a conversation with all of us and our attorneys present. This isn't just about feelings anymore. It's about legal and financial obligations." I switched to Amelia's call, hearing her instantly launch into explanation. "Myrtle, there's been a huge misunderstanding. We were never going to sell without telling you. We were just getting information to make an informed decision as a family." "Amelia," I interrupted her practiced speech. "I've already spoken with Jacob. I've seen the emails. I know what you both said about me, including the comments about real family and not needing me anymore." She faltered briefly before recovering. "Those were taken out of context. We were just stressed about finances and holiday planning. You know how it is." "What I know," I replied evenly, is that I've been excluded from Christmas while you host your entire family in a house I'm paying for. I know you've been trying to remove my name from property documents without my knowledge, and I know you referred to me as a complication rather than family. That's not fair, Amelia protested. We appreciate everything you've done for us. We just need some space sometimes. Surely you can understand that. I understand boundaries. I agreed. What I don't understand is deception. If you wanted changes to our arrangement, the adult thing would have been to discuss it openly. We were going to, Amelia insisted. After the holidays, after you'd already moved forward with selling plans, after you'd poisoned my relationship with Noah. That timing seems convenient. Amelia's voice hardened. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It was a few private emails venting frustration, not some master plan to cut you out. Let's discuss it all properly, I suggested. I've copied my attorney on communications going forward. I suggest you and Jacob do the same. We'll set up a video conference next week to address the house situation. Is that really necessary? Amelia asked, alarm evident in her voice. Bringing lawyers into a family matter seems extreme. $500,000 is not a small family matter, I pointed out. And it seems we need clear documentation of any agreements going forward since our previous understanding has been disregarded. After ending the call with Amelia, I felt drained but resolute. Standing up for myself was unfamiliar territory, but Martha had assured me I was doing the right thing legally and morally. I had been generous, not foolish, and now I needed to protect myself. Later that day, we scheduled a video conference for the following week with Martha representing me and Jacob, and Amelia bringing their own attorney. In the meantime, I continued preparations for my Mexico trip with Sandra, allowing myself to feel excitement about the holiday, despite the family turmoil. To my surprise, word of the situation spread through our extended family. Jacob's cousin Taylor called to express support, sharing that Jacob and Amelia had become increasingly materialistic over recent years, often bragging about their possessions and upcoming purchases. Most shocking of all was the call from Amelia's mother, Charlotte. Myrtle, I just heard from Amelia about what's happening, she began cautiously. I want you to know that Robert and I had no idea you were still making the mortgage payments on their house. We were told you gifted them the down payment, but they handled the rest. That's not the arrangement we made, I explained, surprised by her call. I believe you, Charlotte said, and I'm appalled by how they've treated you, especially about Christmas. Please know you were never meant to be excluded. We were told you had other plans this year. Her words brought a measure of comfort, knowing that not everyone in my extended family approved of Jacob and Amelia's behavior. Thank you for calling, Charlotte. That means a lot. We raised Amelia better than this, she said before hanging up, and I intend to remind her of that. 6 months after that fateful Christmas season, I sat on the patio of my new home, a charming 2-bedroom bungalow in Scottsdale, just 10 minutes from Sandra's place. The garden was beginning to bloom with desert flowers I'd planted, their vibrant colors standing out against the carefully arranged rock landscaping. The aftermath of my confrontation with Jacob and Amelia had been difficult, but ultimately healing. Our video conference with the attorneys had revealed the full extent of their plans. They had indeed intended to sell the house using the profit for a down payment on a much larger home in Lakewood. They had assumed that since I'd been generous in the past, I would simply sign over my rights and continue making payments until the house sold. When faced with the reality of their actions laid out in black and white, with emails and documents as evidence, they had few defenses. Their attorney advised them that they had 3 options: buy out my investment at market value, continue the current arrangement with me as co-owner, and acknowledge they could not sell without my consent or force a sale, and split the proceeds according to our investments. After much discussion and negotiation, Jacob and Amelia decided to buy out my share. They secured a new mortgage, paying me $480,000, representing my down payment, and the principal I'd paid over 5 years, plus a portion of the property's appreciation. The money allowed me to purchase my bungalow outright and still have savings for my future. The emotional healing took longer than the financial resolution. For the first month after our confrontation, Jacob and I barely communicated beyond necessary exchanges about the house. Noah's video calls stopped entirely, which broke my heart anew each day. To cope with the pain, I joined a support group for older adults experiencing family estrangement. The stories shared there helped me realize I wasn't alone. That many parents had been taken advantage of by adult children who saw them as financial resources rather than people with their own needs and feelings. I also returned to teaching part-time, accepting a position at a local elementary school, working with struggling readers 3 days a week. The children's enthusiasm and the meaningful work helped restore my sense of purpose and worth beyond my role as mother and grandmother. Gradually, tentatively, Jacob began reaching out again, first with brief texts, checking in, then occasional phone calls. I maintained firm boundaries, engaging politely, but not offering financial assistance when he hinted at the challenges of their new, larger mortgage. 3 months after our confrontation, Amelia's mother, Charlotte, called to tell me she and her husband had insisted on family therapy for Jacob, and Amelia, prompted by their behavior toward me. They're beginning to understand the damage they've caused, Charlotte told me. It's a slow process, but they're recognizing how their materialism and entitlement hurt people who love them. By May, Jacob called with a genuine apology. "I lost sight of what matters, Mom." He admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I got caught up in wanting more, bigger, better, and I used your generosity without appreciating the person behind it. I'm so sorry for how I hurt you." I accepted his apology, but made it clear that rebuilding trust would take time. Words are important, Jacob, but consistent actions matter more. The most significant healing came when Noah and I resumed our video calls. At first, they were supervised by Jacob or Amelia, but as spring turned to summer, they allowed Noah to call me independently again. His innocent love, unchanged by the adult conflicts around him, was a balm to my wounded heart. William and I also reconnected in a meaningful way. What began as friendly dinners evolved into a deeper relationship. At 62, I found myself experiencing the butterflies in anticipation of new love, something I had thought was far behind me. William understood my need for independence after everything that had happened, and we moved forward, slowly enjoying each other's company without pressure. As for Christmas, Jacob tentatively asked in June if I would consider spending the holiday with them this year, at my home in Arizona rather than theirs. "We'd like to start fresh," he explained. "Build new traditions that include everyone but respect the boundaries you've set." I agreed with conditions. The visit would be limited to 3 days. They would stay in a nearby hotel rather than my home, and there would be no discussions of money or financial assistance. When I look back at last Christmas, the pain still lingers, but there's also gratitude for the awakening it prompted. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your self-respect. I learned that generosity should be met with gratitude, not entitlement. And most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and create the life you deserve. Sometimes the most painful moments become turning points that lead us to unexpected joy. My small desert home, my rekindled romance with William, my part-time teaching that keeps my mind active, my deepened relationship with Sandra, and my carefully rebuilt connection with Jacob's family. These are the fruits of that difficult Christmas when I finally said, enough. The journey wasn't easy. There were days I questioned my decisions, nights I cried myself to sleep, missing Noah, moments I nearly gave in to Jacob's initial pressure to resume mortgage payments without addressing the underlying issues. But with each small act of self-respect, I grew stronger and clearer about my worth. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can give those we love is the example of valuing ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a way that teaches healthy boundaries and mutual respect. My son is learning that lesson now. And one day, when Noah is grown, perhaps he'll remember the grandmother who showed him that love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used, that sometimes the deepest love involves the courage to say no. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took advantage of your generosity? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to my channel for more authentic stories about family dynamics and personal growth. And share this video with someone who might need to be reminded of their worth today. Thank you for listening, and remember that it's never too late to rewrite the rules of your relationships.